My main goal today is to blow up and act like I don't know nobody, and then my second goal is to set up the beds.
Hey, get out of here! Yep. Price is right.
Thank you for sharing your home.
In a 15-passenger van to Ohio, the Chrysler invention hums and blows. Warm air through the vents sends it straight to the bone. Outside it's 9 below. It's a pain I've never known.
The only place I know where to begin is to thank those of you watching and those who poured their lives into my family this past year. It's been 11 months since I posted part 2 of this series that documents the good, the bad, and the ugly of how I'm currently building my business. I'll put a thing at the top of this video if you want to start back from the beginning, but as always, this video will stand on its own. In a really quick and dirty nutshell, my wife got pregnant in September of 24. I quit my job at Restoration Hardware earlier that year selling furniture to be a full-time realtor. I made 3 sales in the first 6 months, which is not bad at all, but it was definitely not enough to support our family. And I realized pretty quickly that I just did not like being a realtor. I heard about rental arbitrage back in 2021 and kept thinking about it occasionally until the pregnancy test. If you ever need motivation to get your butt in gear, get your wife pregnant. Cannot recommend that enough. It's also pretty fun. So in February 2025, I started cold calling a bunch of apartment complexes in Nashville to see if they would let my business rent their space, let me put it on Airbnb, and let me keep the profit. I found an awesome building in Nashville, really close to downtown, and their management team has been an absolute dream to work with. Part 1 and 2 of this series show the process of how we started that first unit, but I'm gonna keep it 100 with you, Chef. It takes way too long to download all this stuff off my iCloud library. I got like 2 terabytes living in a data farm in West Virginia, and that intro sequence just about killed my patience. So this one's gonna be a little different. We'll sprinkle some fun clips in intermittently, but let's just jump in and catch up. Why not? Okay, let's quickly look at some numbers because there's a lot of gaps to fill in over the last year. I think the last section of part 2 of this series was me just being overjoyed at how many bookings were flowing in on our first day being live. Honestly, you could probably guess that was just because we were underpriced severely. It actually kind of worked in our favor because we underpromised, over-delivered. We ended up getting our guest favorite badge with the gold laurel within the first couple weeks, which actually allowed us to demand a higher price. But nonetheless, here's how our first unit with the red couch that I found next to a dumpster performed over the last year. In total, this unit brought in $50,493. Now that definitely includes tax that the guest paid, but I think it's really cool to see something we invested around $5,000 into a year ago 10x over that year. I think we could definitely just end the video there and say that was a success. Good, time to go home. We had a few direct bookings in this unit and I think 1 or 2 stays from booking.com, but that was only around $1,500 gross. I haven't bothered with trying to optimize on Verbos since we are so dialed in on Airbnb. It's just a little bit of a hassle and they only have like 20-30% market share in this space. I think if you look back at the first video in this series, the neighborhood that I was underwriting for 1-bed apartments projected right around $39K annually. And since there's still another week left before the full year, we actually have another $1,600 of booking value left on the calendar. So I was freaking dead on with those projections, and I guess that means we did about $1,100 better if those guests don't try to come at me with a full refund request. I'm locked in on my pricing strategy and learned some awesome tricks to always show up on the first page of the algorithm. Definitely a good idea for another video, but not today. As you can see, we had 92% occupancy over the last year. I've just recently taken over cleaning all our personal units, and now my wife and I are getting to keep a serious bit of that revenue. But I block off certain dates just because I don't want to clean on Sundays, and some days I just want to do office or design work. I know for a fact that we could be 100% booked, and we were up until about December. I'm just trying to not make my lower back hurt anymore since I'm doing all the cleaning. You can can see that our average price per night is trending up slightly over time. That's awesome to see because as the listing matures and we keep getting more and more 5-star reviews, we build trust and can leverage that to demand a higher price. In short, this thing cooked. Our low season was absolutely brutal, and I'll break down more of what we had to do in order to survive that. But the high seasons are totally cuckoo town in Nashville, and there is no reason that you should have any vacancy, especially with a smaller product like the studios we have.
I'm sipping wine in a robe. I look too good to be alone. My house clean.
So this next part of the story is complicated and messy. There are a lot of triumphs in this story, but also a lot of mistakes that I made during the scaling phase that led to consequences that I'll be dealing with for a while. About 2 months after we launched our first unit, I get a call from the property manager asking if I wanted to take any more on. She said that we could have as many as we wanted. The first one was just freaking killing it, and this is where my hubris began. Haley was still working full-time as a nanny and planned to up until her due date, which was June 26th last year. That gave me about 1 month to completely replace her income, and I was just dead set on that goal. I was also really jealous of 2 other guys that were starting some units in my building as well, so I wanted to double what they were doing. Editing joke here, those 2 guys are actually some of my best friends now, and we actually do a lot of work together, and they've helped me out so freaking much in this journey. Just wanted to put that in here because you should never make a decision in your business based off of an emotion like jealousy. So logically, I told the property manager that I was gonna go for 4. I had zero clue of how we were going to swing that. However, I did apply for a Capital One card and asked for an increase on all of the cards that my wife and I had at the time. I think we ended up getting about $7,500 from Capital One. So that would cover the move-in fees for 3 of the 4 units, security deposits, first month's rent, that type of thing. So we had to figure out a way to furnish all 4 of those. Very serendipitously, a friend of mine introduced me to a woman who was selling a furniture rental company. There was one account that was bringing in about $422 a month just from a guy who was renting furniture downtown. And there was a ton of inventory over 3 different storage units. I offered to buy everything for $20,000 on 24 months of payments, which shakes out to be about $953 per month. I'm pretty sure I overpaid about $5,000 to $8,000 on that deal, and I'm still dealing with that. Stupid tax, dog. Regardless, that fixed my need to buy furniture for the 4 units for the most part. And at that point, we were pretty much funded and ready to go for the whole project. Anyways, with the timing of everything and me still doing some realtor work, it took me about a full month to get the whole plan together, to sort through all of the inventory that I just purchased, and then to get the units ready for the fire marshal to come through and all that stuff. So we blasted through Haley's due date and she was about to pop. For whatever reason, I thought it would be smart to just go ahead and schedule move-in day on July 5th. She started having contractions on July 4th and we went to the hospital that night. She has 3 days of labor and Paul finally is born on July 7th. So I canceled the move-in day and canceled it to 3 days after Paul was born. Turns out that I was really only able to fund the first 3 units with the credit cards. So once we launched those first 3, we were just gonna put everything into the 4th one to get it off the ground.
Welcome back, Stanley.
Rob Peter to pay Paul, I guess. It took a full month for these 3 to get ready, and other than my mom coming to help buy some plants, paint a table, and the guys at the beginning of this video who helped move everything in, I was pretty much doing this alone for 16 hours a day for an entire month. This is just dad lore maxing, y'all. It's time to ascend and mog. All 3 of those units had major issues with the fire suppression system, so we had to get contractors to come out and fix all of that stuff before the fire marshal would even consider looking at the units. Around the time that we were finishing getting the fire suppression system fixed in the first 3 units, I was able to start working on the 4th unit, which is the best one so far. I did everything I possibly could except for ordering a bunch of stuff on Amazon that we would need later, like sheets and inventory, etc. Once we fixed the fire suppression system, got the permits on those 3, we put them up immediately and they started crushing it right off the bat. I mean, they were killing it. So beginning of September, it was looking like we were gonna be making about $20,000 that month with all 5 up and rolling. I genuinely fooled myself into thinking that we were not going to have a low season. Like, I just did some mental acrobatics and magicked myself into thinking that the pro forma and the projections that I had run on AirDNA earlier that year were just false, and because we were better, like, we were just gonna keep rolling through the winter and like that's just not how life works. We barely turned a profit December through February. It got bad, like seriously bad. I had someone doing my guest messaging for all 5 units at that point. I was paying $850 a month for that. I was still also paying a cleaner for all 5 units at that point, and that was about $5,600 a month with all the turnovers that we had. So I was paying the cleaner like a partner at this point. We just hit a serious wall. I mean, the revenue was starting to take a dive. I looked back at my projections and realized that things were just gonna get worse and worse until January 31st. February, things would start picking back up, and then when the spring hits, that's when things get better in Nashville. My cleaner was very kind and offered to take deferred payments on the cleaning and keep working, but I should have just taken that as a red flag and pulled the plug immediately back in November. It took me another month and a half to get my head on straight, so in early mid-January, I started cleaning all of the units and took over all the guest communications. I have a pretty hefty promissory note that I gotta pay my cleaner back on over this next year, so that's where some of that money's going. It's gonna be about the same as what I'm paying on the furniture rental bill. We should be wrapped up with that around December, but it's still like a noose around my neck every day. That's like $1,800 a month just going right out the door for stuff that's already happened or isn't really making me money right now. I ended up selling one of our units for just about what I put into it, and that ended up helping us get current on everything in January. Honestly, I built a great system. I just scaled way too quick and made some stupid decisions along the way.
Hey again, Editing Joe here. I did just want to put this in here because I tend to just kind of focus on the negative and kind of critique myself over and over again until the cows come home. But we actually did create something pretty incredible. We started with $5,000 cash, if you remember that, and we leveraged some credit cards and some unconventional ways of financing this whole business. But starting with $5,000 hard cash and creating this $156,000 in 1 year with some sweat equity, I would say that that's not a bad thing. I did just want to acknowledge that we did pretty well.
I don't think anybody who's ever started a business has gotten out of this scot-free. But right around crunch time was when the light bulb came on in my head and I realized that managing other people's properties was definitely going to be worth my full attention. Welcome to Baru, my favorite. After we had launched all 4 of the other units, I had a ton of furniture left over from the rental company that I just was not going to use. The company was still bringing in that $422 per month from the active account that came with the business, and that was pretty much the storage cost for all 3 of the storage units. I really wanted to free up the cash flow, so I listed everything that was left over from the business for sale on Facebook Marketplace. I made like $2,500 in a couple days, which was pretty sweet. That paid rent and got some groceries for us. But there was one guy who was really adamant about coming by and buying everything that I had left. He showed up and I just started asking him what he was going to do with all the furniture. Turns out that he had some short-term rentals in Nashville that he was trying to furnish. I think this may have been the quickest I've ever thought on my feet before. I asked him if he 1, needed a designer, and 2, needed a property manager. He was like, yeah, I actually do. I have several rentals in Nashville already, and we're about to have 3 more go live soon, and I have a few more on the beach down in Florida, and it's just getting to be a little bit too much for myself and my wife to handle on our own. So we are definitely looking to hand that off to somebody pretty soon. And it just so happened that the other designer that we've been working with for like 10 years just went to work with another design firm, and she's just too busy for us these days. Boom! Like, I don't even know what else to say. This changed the trajectory of our business and honestly our life. I pitched him on design services and managing the other units that he had in Nashville, and he bought in. I came over to one of the new units for a site visit to take some measurements, collect the floor plans and all that stuff. I immediately went home to learn Spoke, pulled the floor plans up on SketchUp and started sourcing everything, pulled an all-nighter and had these back over to him within 3 days of the site visit. I spent a few days figuring out the legal requirements for managing other people's properties in Nashville that are designated as short-term rentals. I needed to get a VLS, or a vacation lodging service license, a zoning letter stating that I was able to do business at a certain address, and an escrow account from a bank so that I could hold other people's money in trust. Turns out that the next VLS class was a month away, and it would be illegal for me to execute the contracts that I had signed with my brand new client. However, there was another class that was starting the next day, and I saw that my landlord was teaching the class on Zoom, so I called her and she let me in. But All of the reading material for the class was down in Chattanooga. I don't know why I couldn't just download it from the website or something like that. It was going to be like $350 to overnight it, and they weren't sure if it was going to get up there in time, so I just drove to Chattanooga and picked it up anyways. The class was 8 hours on Zoom, sat through it, got the zoning letter from the county. That took 5 minutes, and I have a really good friend at the bank who was able to get me in to set up a trust account at the bank where my business accounts are. This was right around Christmas time, so I was busting my butt to get everything installed on the first unit for my new client in East Nashville. This was while I was simultaneously trying to obtain this license. Pretty early during the install on the first unit in East Nashville, the neighbor comes over and he likes what he sees. Asked me about management services as well as design services, and boom, first referral right there. I also had a real estate client that I worked with from the Zillow team last year who ended up purchasing a short-term rental right around downtown Nashville as well, and we're managing that too. The timing on all of this was absolutely divine. Starting the property management design aspect of this business has been the most natural thing to partner with the Lord on. When I break down the numbers on the units that I'm managing now, I'm walking away with just about the same money that I'm walking away with my arbitrage units from. And I don't have a mortgage or rent payment on any of those. It's altogether a better deal, and those ideal clients are everywhere in Nashville. The design division of this business is probably my favorite just because I get to let my creative juices flow. On the first unit in East Nashville, my wife just helped me when I was going too far out on a limb with the design choices. Also, my client gave really good feedback along the way during all the revisions for the design process, and we are all super happy with how the renderings came out, and everybody's even more happy with the way that the property actually turned out in real life. The first unit took me 3 months to design and install altogether. Again, I was doing this all on my own. I'm also currently speaking with a designer who I used to work with at Restoration Hardware about doing some of the design work with the company. We're building out the pricing and the actual product offerings that we're going to be trying to take to market soon so that we can scale this well. I also traded some work with a friend who owns an ad agency, and he's putting some funds towards some meta ads in the near future once we get crystal clear on our offerings. Real quick, before we wrap up, I feel like this context is important because I constantly forget to reflect on how far God has taken me in my life. 8 years ago, I was strung out on Adderall and hydrocodone, dropping acid every week, and I couldn't go more than a couple hours without smoking weed. I survived what I'm pretty sure was an overdose at a Halloween party in 2018 where I woke up blue-faced in a bathroom. 3 days later, I checked into a 9-month inpatient rehab facility in Bessemer, Alabama called The Foundry, the same one where the real Walter White went. From there, I went to a discipleship school, then got a job building guitars at Gibson up in Nashville, leading a team of 35 by the time I was 22. I then met Haley, and now we have our son Paul. Somehow, I ended up here talking to you about Airbnb. It's a real trip in hindsight. I don't necessarily say all this stuff to just be dramatic for the sake of telling my story. I just say it because when Haley and I were freaking out about paying rent over the winter, the same God that kept me alive in that bathroom while I was overdosing was still watching over us. It was just a different lesson in classroom this time. I truly made an idol out of this business over the last year. I was finding my security in the future hope of being wealthy and all of my plans working out instead of him. And he was gracious enough to let it get uncomfortable so I would notice. The fact that I'm a husband and a father and a business owner right now is not something I take lightly. I've fought really hard to be where we are today, but at the same time, God has opened all of the doors and closed the other ones that weren't for us. Over the last few years, I got sucked into the prosperity gospel pretty hard. I was really only listening to people who told me that God was going to fill up my bank account because I believed hard enough. Pastors and influencers essentially rewrapping manifestation and all that crap into Christianese. I had no category for a God who wanted his children to be gentle and lowly. It really wasn't until over the winter, when the revenue started cratering in the business, that I realized Jesus wasn't just the conquering king in Revelation that we read about, but also the man of sorrows in Isaiah 53. When I'm holding my newborn son after a long day scrubbing toilets in our Airbnbs, the Father is teaching me who I actually am and where my identity comes from. When we had to cut our losses and sell that unit, he was teaching me that he prunes every branch that bears a lot of fruit. He revealed some goofy things I was believing, and by his Spirit, I'm able to repent and come back to him daily. That's worth way more than anything this business taught me. What I actually want now is a lot simpler than what I wanted a year ago. Land, no debt, a wood shop, time with my kids, and to be present with Haley at home. An ever-increasing faith in God. You know, a few other things here and there, but it's pretty simple these days. I won 2 months free in this office that you're seeing in a raffle, which is pretty on brand for how this past year has gone, honestly. I'm really working on dialing in on the management and design offerings before we hit the market. And if I can land a few more clients, I might actually be able to justify signing the lease on this place. But I'm not rushing it. Learned that lesson pretty hard last year. If you made it this far, I really can't thank you enough. Drop me a comment if you're considering going on a similar journey. I really appreciate interacting with you guys, and I had a couple phone calls with some of you who were considering arbitrage last year. If you decide to subscribe, it would make my day, and liking this video will definitely make it so other people can see it too. I've wanted to do this YouTube thing since I was 10 years old, and I've decided that this year is the year that I'm really going to dedicate some serious time towards growing this channel. I got some really great feedback on parts 1 and 2, and again, there should be a link up at the top of this video or somewhere around my face right about now that'll take you to the first 2 parts so that you can watch this from the very beginning. And if you just want to talk shop or need somebody to commiserate with, hit me up on Instagram at CashflowWithJoe. I don't have it all figured out, but I'm grateful that you're on this journey with me. Until next time.